later date. Anyways, John Rickwald has been a friend of mine for many years, and we invited him to join CERT and be an instructor because he's been a key in the prepper, not the crazy nut job prepper, but the earthquake prepper since the days of the Silmar and Northridge earthquakes, where he was involved with some of the very first attempts to get people to have ready bags, to be ready for 3 days, to train their children to be prepared. He was sort of a leader in that movement, and in those early years he was considered out there, but now the rest of society has caught up to his plans.
Yeah, we're all out there now.
Yeah. So we've asked him to just sort of briefly touch on what you might need to get through the next event. Did anybody know?
So first I just want to start take you down the road that I took 29 years ago. I was at an earthquake preparedness meeting. I was sitting right there in Santa Monica. And I really didn't want to be there. I was coaxed to be there with my family, and okay. So I'm sitting there, and I remember the guy talking, he couldn't get his pants on during the Silmar quake, and he couldn't figure out why, and I thought that was funny. And he was saying we needed water, we need a flashlight, we need a radio. Yeah, I got a water, I got a flashlight, I got a radio. I'm getting out of here yet. So finally it's time to go home. I go home. 20 minutes after we get home, there's an aftershock to the Whittier Narrows earthquake. The lights went out immediately because they're supposed to. Oh, I didn't know there'd be a test. So I walk over to the drawer. I know the drawer is here somewhere. Oh, there it is. There's that flash. I can feel it. But it won't turn on and it feels wet. I don't understand why. Okay, well, there's another drawer over here. There's the flash. I know I got it. It's not working and it feels wet too. Oh, okay, well, I know I have this radio. I have my lighter out. Hit the lighter. Well, this is battery acid on my hands. And I go for the radio and I see bleeding battery acid out of the back of it. So then at least I got water. So I go into the kitchen, I open up the sink. We stored water inside of the milk cartons, the plastic milk cartons. I didn't know they're biodegradable. So I grab that water and poosh, water all over me. The lights come on. I'm looking at battery acid, water all over me in the radio, going, boy, am I a moron. 20 minutes ago, I'm thinking, oh, I got it, I'm fine, I don't need anything, I got all I need. So I got into it. I started reading and researching. I started making disaster preparedness packs. Just small packs that you could have in the trunk of your car or inside your house, because what was on the market almost 30 years ago was iffy at best. And I thought, well, after doing my research, I kind of wanted to beef it up a little. So I made some for my neighbors, if they would buy them for cost, because of course there's material going in. A couple did, mostly wouldn't. Okay, a few friends bought some, most people wouldn't, so most of my stuff is stashed now in the garage. But meanwhile, I'm training my family. We heard the other night about me training my kids at 2 o'clock in the morning, shaking the beds, making a game out of it. They'd laugh their heads off because Dad was waking them up at 2 o'clock in the morning, shaking the beds. So I always tried to make it fun for the boys. Well, then Northridge hits. And like I told you, I get up. I had emergency lights in the house. Which, by the way, I want to go quickly over this. We've all seen the light that plug into the wall. These turn on automatically when the power goes out. But this is what I had, which you'd like, well, they're here somewhere, they better be. Emergency lights that come on automatically when the power goes out. So the whole house lit up because I had 2 sets of these, one in the hallway and one in the living room, and then I had these in the different bedrooms. So yeah, my kids were in the hallway smiling, I thought it was pretty funny. And everything's calmed down, and we're in the living room. My wife goes, oh dear, and I go, look out in the street. And I open it, there's a crowd out there. And I go out there, what's going on? They said, we're trying to find a volunteer. For what? They said, they knocked on your door because we know you have flashlights and radios, and you kind of feel bad we didn't buy them when you asked us to. So, of course, that morning, I gave away all my flashlights and radios. That's for a good cause. But one of the interesting things that happened was one of my wife's fellow workers at UCLA bought one of my little packs. And she lived in Northridge. She lived in one of those apartment buildings that we all saw on TV that there was dry parking under it and the whole thing collapsed. She just happened to be in the one of those 3 that did not collapse. But she felt the shaking. Well, she had her pack sitting next to her bed. She grabs the flashlight. She can see what's going on. She goes up to the door and it wouldn't open because there was a slight shear. I recommended that she buy a crowbar. She didn't. But she went on the porch and yelled at somebody that came up the stairs, knocked the door through, and she got out. But she was pretty shaken up. I mean, that was a pretty big ordeal. She turns on the radio and realizes that it's going to be okay. She just happened to be at the epicenter. The rest of Los Angeles is fine for the most part. A couple of overamps and bridges and some damage in Santa Monica. That made her feel so much better. Starting with that flashlight. Starting with being ready. People were gathering around her because she had the only light. And that she'd listen to the radio. Pretty soon she's helping other people just with information and some light. It makes a big difference to have a little made-up pack. Now the CERT pack you're going to get is really designed for you to help yourself and other people. But the pack I'm talking about is a getting home pack. This is what my wife carries in the trunk of her car. The change of clothes and shoes, and all the things I believe is necessary. She's about 20 miles from home. Maybe she's 30, maybe she's 5 miles. And most of you got the list. I'm sorry for the people who did not get the list. But it's my little list that I've done research in 29 years. What I find fascinating is how easy it is for you to be okay in a big disaster with just dumb little things. I've read hundreds of stories of people, of course, the flashlight made a big difference. Or hundreds of stories where the bottle of water made a difference. So that's why you see in the FEMA recommended items, things like that. But it's not just those particular things, it's oddball things like maybe a little emergency blanket, which is those Mylar, just to keep warm for a little while. Also, when you have a pack that's designed to get you home, there's little emergencies that aren't major disasters. You could be at a friend's house thinking, he's sick, I don't want to leave my friend, I want to spend the night, but I wished I had my toothbrush, maybe a change of clothes or whatever. Well, it's all right here. It could be that you're driving down the road and realize you need some gas, and I left my wallet. Well, my wife carries a little cash and some extra ID in her pack. So it's not just a big disaster. I carry a pack that's a lot more elaborate than this, but I can't believe how many times I pull things out of it that I just need on a semi-regular basis. So, I recommend you make yourself a getting home pack. The neat thing about a getting home pack is, if you didn't do a lot at home, maybe you can't get your supplies out of the house because it's not safe after the earthquake. You go to your car, you have something in the trunk. You have some water. You have a little bit of food. You have a lighter. There's no reason to learn bushcraft. Everybody says, oh, you're the disaster bushcraft guy. You know how to start fires with 2 sticks. And I go, no. Like the CERT class teaches, you don't need to rub 2 sticks together. You can catch the rabbit. Well, yeah, I've learned that stuff, but that's not the idea, because the CERT class says if you have some basic disaster foods, an MRE, which is a meal ready to eat, or food rations, or freeze-dried foods, you don't need to catch the rabbit and skin it and cook it. And the really good part about this is just by having it, by knowing that you've made the effort to do something in the event of a disaster, it just makes you feel better. When we worry about these, it's like, well, what am I going to do? Well, if you have the things that you know you should have, you don't do anything. You just continue on with life and not worry about the disaster. By doing these things, you're telling yourself that I'm going to take hold of a bad situation. You may not even need the pack in a disaster situation, but it's going to make you feel a little better. It's like a security blanket. Also, and when you think about it, making yourself more positive in that situation is a very strong thing, because you're going to slow down and think better. You're not going to make the wrong decision, run out, or panic. Another thing about preparedness is that you're also becoming part of the solution and not part of the problem. Because for every person that is not prepared, of course, that's part of the problem. And for every person, could you imagine if everybody in this county was prepared and we did get our major quake? My dream is that, and we see the FEMA trucks coming down the road, and we go, yeah, go on to somebody who needs it. We're good here. Of course, that's highly unlikely. But the more of us that are prepared, the better off we are. Another thing is, by being prepared and doing these simple things, you're showing your family and friends that this is a normal thing. A lot of people consider preparation sort of wacky, But really, we buy life insurance and we buy fire insurance and we do these things because everybody else does it and it's a normal thing. But this is no different. It's just that it has a stigma to it because we don't want to think about a big disaster. So it's just easier to say, no, I'm good, like that guy in Santa Monica 29 years ago. Now, the best part of being prepared is to take care of your family and friends. If you do a little bit, and they see that you're doing a little bit, or better yet, just your family by going to this is our meeting. Today we're going to this meeting place, so we all learn where it is. We're calling up our uncle out of state. We all got that phone number to call our uncle. We all make sure we have a hide key because our keys got crushed wherever, during the disaster. And that's a very positive thing because that's going to calm your family and, of course, calm yourself. So I look at disaster preparedness as a very positive thing. It's telling yourself, I'm not going to worry about these disasters because I've done all I really can do. And if we just take one day a year, we bring our family together, we confirm we still have those phone numbers, and we check our packs and make sure none of the MREs expired or the batteries are good and on the flashlights, and we start going around the house and making sure those batteries are good, we're way ahead of the curve. And then the next day we go back to our regular lives, worrying about, the normal things that we worry about, like can I pay my bills or whatever. But I want to make sure that we understand what's very important here. First, it wasn't mentioned, but it's one of my pet peeves, is after earthquake in the state of California, and definitely here, we have a thing called valley fever. It's a spore that comes out of the ground. During the, I can't remember the name of the quake in the Central Valley, but there was 300 cases of valley fever after that quake because the cracks opened up and closed again. After a quake, please put a mask on for as much as 20 minutes after. If you're in a building, maybe even more. The spore can't live very long out in open air. Okay? Then have the mask ready for the after quakes. Another little concern of mine is communications. You should have a really good radio at home. A crank, AM, FM, weather radio. There's things that you can buy cheap from the dollar store, and there's times you should spend a little money. One of them is a good radio for the house, and a decent little crank radio for your getting home pack. Now, we've learned that communications are important. It depends on what you can afford, what you can do. This is a satellite telephone. If all the power went out and all the cells are down, I can still make a phone call because the satellites don't care what happened down here. In fact, Jim has a satellite phone. He'll probably be the second person I call. Still alive? Yeah, no, good. And another thing.
Can he call a cell phone or?
Well, the cell phones aren't working. Why would you call a cell phone? You can call anywhere in the world, but if you're calling locally, the odds are no one's going to answer because all the cells are down. So you're calling your friend back east. I'm going to call my son so that he knows I'm all right in the event my wife calls my son, because we all have an out-of-state phone number to call. Now, a second thing I think is very important to spend money on. These are the cheap flashlights. We've all seen these. You get like, I don't know, a dozen for $12 or whatever. Okay, they're great. Just don't keep using it because trust me, the switch goes bad. But these are great for putting in the drawer. Keep it alongside your bed. But when it really comes down to your main flashlight, this is the one. But yeah, it is. And this is not even the good ones. The good ones are a few $100s. This one's about a $60 flashlight. And of course, this is a $1 flashlight. But we've all seen the incandescent bulbs, which, the old style flashlight. Unfortunately, our CERT bags are coming with flashlights that are incandescent bulb. Take that out and put it somewhere between this and that in there. Because if you take an incandescent bulb and you drop it, it's not going to work again.
So what kind of bulbs are these?
These are LEDs. This is first generation. This is fourth generation. So we're spending our money, if we're going to spend money, We're spending it on radios. We're spending it on a little bit of lighting. We're spending it on good flashlights. My wife has a nice little knife. When most of the stuff in here is dollar store, this is not a dollar store knife. You're going to stand, it's not very big like you see on TV, the big machetes, and you don't need a big knife. You just need a blade that runs the entire length of the handle. And usually when you start buying something like that, it's going to be a $10 blade or more. Don't buy a cheap knife. Don't buy a cheap flashlight. And don't buy a cheap radio. But the other stuff, for the most part, at the dollar store, gauzes and light sticks and things like that, there's no difference between really one or the other for practical use. So we've covered that. Basically, I just want to remind you that these things like the getting home pack concept and whatever you've done at your house are going to make a big difference. More than I can even begin to describe. The thousands of stories I've read about some simple things or some elaborate things. The elaborate, those are the people helping out their neighbors. And I've learned, you're going to have neighbors. If your house is lit up and the rest of the neighborhood's black, they're coming over. All right? So if you have the capability, you do want to put up some extra food for your friends, some extra food and water for your friends or neighbors. You can't do a lot. Nobody can afford to do what Camp Roberts is going to do. They're preparing for refugees. So the good thing is we're not going to send our friends or neighbors away. We're going to help them out and then hope they can get over to Paso fairgrounds to get on a bus to go to Camp Roberts. But personally, I don't want to go to Camp Roberts. I have enough food and water for 3 months to stay home. And it might take more than 3 months to get the power grid to come back up, or to get the roads open going out to Creston, or to just being able to go to the grocery store. But FEMA recommends, and Red Cross recommends anywhere from 3 days to a week. I have no argument with that, but I think it should be longer. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure we understand that nobody in this room is me in Santa Monica not 29 years ago. I think it was, he said, well, let's pretend we got an earthquake tonight. The funny thing, I guess about the time he said that, there was an earthquake. And then we also heard we're going to have flooding pretty soon. I mean, how many times you said? 3 times we're going to have flooding. Okay. Unfortunately, you can't say they're wrong. We could have a major earthquake. That could have been a foreshadow to something. We don't know. So I'm asking you, when you go home, you walk in the door and you go, yeah, that John guy, he was right. Let's see. You know what? This is a cruddy flashlight. Tomorrow I'm going to start making that list of those things you're going to do tomorrow to get, to be a little more prepared. And that's all I ask. Thanks.
Right on time. Copies of what